Welcome back to New Hope Kids and Junior Youth, and a special welcome if this is your first time here. You've picked a great week to join us because we're starting a brand new 6-week unit on God. What is He and who is He? We'll learn about God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Let's get started with a quick activity. Whether you're in Kids Church or Junior Youth at the New Hope building or in your own home, pause the video and get a paper and something to write with for each person watching, parents and teachers included. When I say go, pause the video and spend 5 minutes writing down the first 5 things you think of when I say God. There are no wrong answers. It's just whatever you think of in those first few minutes. Don't worry about spelling, and if you're maybe a little bit too young to know how to write words, why not draw a little picture that will help you remember the words you're thinking of. Ready, set, go. Now take turns going around the room with everyone saying one thing and write it down on a master list. Ask if anyone had that thing or something similar. You could keep a tally. Maybe some words are getting said a lot. Pause the video and generate your master list. I bet you guys made a really great list. It would be really interesting to compare everybody who's watching this video and see what their lists are like. There are some things that come right to mind when we think of God. And this week, we are going to talk about the characteristics of what makes God God. Next week, we'll talk more about the characteristics of who He is. People use the word God to mean many different things. People think of all kinds of things when they think about God, like the list you wrote down. But most people think of God as a powerful and supernatural. What does supernatural mean? Supernatural means something outside of nature, something that isn't part of the normal way things work. It's super, above nature, above what we can understand. We're going to play a little game now to help us understand one of the key traits of God. If you are at home and you have the space, pause the video and play a quick game of tag. Seriously, parents, you'll love a little burst of exercise and it will actually be fun. The oldest person in the room is it. If you're at the New Hope building in Kids Church or Junior Youth, your leader will say one person's name. And if they say your name, you have to jump up out of your seat, but stay in your spot, remember. Jump up and down 3 times and say someone else's name. And they have to jump up and down 3 times and then say someone else's name that hasn't been said yet. Go as fast as you can as a class. If you need to review everyone's names first, that might be a good idea. Pause the video and play the game that fits with your location for about 5 minutes. I hope you had a little bit of fun and got some energy from that. Who ended the game as it? Put up your hand. Why were you it? And why were they it? And why were they it? I mean, I could keep asking and asking you, and in the end, the answer would be that oldest person tagged you or said my name. The leader or your parent was the first cause of the game. Everything that happens in the whole world happens because something before it made it happen. Like, you are here because your parents had kids, because their parents had kids, because their parents had kids, and back and back and back and back. And we can go back and back and back and back to the beginning of the world, to the beginning of the universe. And something had to make it start, to be the first because, the first cause, something that was always here, that never had its own cause, that just was. That's the most basic idea of what God is, the thing that has always been, that started everything else. Many people believe many different things about what this first thing is or was. Christians, we have many things to tell us what that first thing is actually like. What are some of the things that tell us and teach us what God is actually like? We can know about this first cause from science, from studying the world that he caused. We can learn about him from history, studying what happened on the world that he caused. We can learn about him from older generations that have already learned about him, like your parents, like people in our church. We can learn from the Bible. And we've spent the last 17 weeks learning about its big story and what it teaches us about God and who he is. We can learn about him through prayer, through direct personal experience with him. And most of all, we learn who God is by Jesus coming to earth. Jesus, who is God, as we will learn more about in the next few weeks. In Jesus, God revealed fully who he was. All these things teach us about what God is like, and the Bible teaches us that he is all powerful. The Bible teaches us that he is a creator. Can we create things too? Yes, we sure can. And as we've talked about before, we're made in God's image. He built us to build. But God is the only one that can create something from nothing. Can you create something like that? No, we can't. God can make something from nothing just by speaking with his word. We can only create out of what he has made. Here's an example. I want you to think of a color you've never seen before. Take a minute and try. Could you do it? I bet. In fact, I'm sure that the color you made up is really a mix of colors you've already seen. We can be creative and create things, but not like God. God is all powerful. The Bible also teaches us that God is everywhere. What does that mean? And how is that different than us? In the big story of the Bible, the last 17 weeks, we talked a lot about the presence of God. We can only be in one place at one time, like a dot on a piece of paper. But God transcends that. That's a super fancy word that means he's above and beyond that. Like we are only this one-dimensional dot living on this paper, but God is like this huge sphere living outside of space and time. He created space and time. So he is outside of them, not inside them. And so he is everywhere and every when in our world of space and time. That means he can always be with you. No matter where you go, he is there. He is not everything. Like this wall is not God, a tree is not part of God, they're his creations. But he is everywhere. He's around us, like kind of like the air is around us. God is all present. The Bible teaches us that God is all-knowing. What does that mean? And how is that different than us? It means that God knows everything we do and think and everything that happens in the whole world, everything that ever happened and everything that's going to happen. He knows that about every person, everything in the universe. We only know what we have experienced or learned about, and only know what, and really only a little part of what is going on inside our own heads. In fact, we don't even know what's going on our heads. Let's play another little game. If you're watching at home, partner up with a sibling or parent. And if you're in kids' church or junior youth, you need to stay in your seat, but turn towards another kid. You don't have to get closer to them. When I say go, you need to count every hair on their head. Ready, set, go. Could you do it in that amount of time? No way. Did you know that God knows exactly how many hairs are on your head? He knows everything about you and about the whole world. Because God knows everything, does that mean he controls everything that's going to happen? Here's an example. When I say go, lift up your right hand. 1, 2, 3, go. Did you do it? whether you did or you didn't. Did God know you were going to or going to not to? He did. Does that mean he made it happen? Remember, God is outside of space and time, so he knows everything that will happen, but that doesn't mean he makes it happen. This is a big capital M mystery that people have been thinking about for like 3,000 years. God made us in his image, and we get to make choices. Yet somehow in our choices, he works all things together for his ultimate plan. God is all-knowing. The Bible teaches us that God is eternal. What does that mean? And how is that different than us? God never started. He has always been. He made up time. It was a thing he invented, and he will never end. Unlike God, we have a starting point when we were conceived inside our moms. But like God, we will never end. We'll live forever in his presence in the new heaven and earth, or outside of his presence, if that is what we choose. But either way, we will live forever and ever. We talked about this a few weeks ago. If we have chosen to trust Jesus, when we die, we get to be with him. And one day, he will bring his presence, his dwelling place, heaven, back to earth and resurrect the whole world, giving us new eternal bodies. Let's all stand up. Remember, if you're at the New Hope building, you got to stay in your same spot, but go ahead and stand up and we'll do a little example. Take your finger and draw a line from one end of your hand to the other. That has a start and an end. Now, draw a circle in the air until you get to the end. But it's a circle. There is no end. It just keeps going and going and going. That's kind of cool, right? Okay, I want everyone to do 5 hops on one foot and sit down. But that circle we drew, that's like us. We have a starting point and we'll keep going and going and going and going. But the amazing thing is God never had that starting point. He kept going and going and going forever in the past. God is eternal. One more we'll talk about today. God is holy. What does that mean? And how is that different from us? This is a really big concept, a big idea that in many ways includes the other 4 we've discussed. It does mean that God is perfect, that he is all good, that who he is defines what is good. And it's also a word that means how different, how supernatural, how much he transcends us, how unique and set apart he is.
You've probably heard the word holy before, or at least sang it in a church song once or twice. And for most people, this idea is really just connected to being a morally good person. So God is holy because he's morally perfect.
Yeah, that is part of it. But in the Bible, the idea of holiness is even bigger and more rich. What it's really describing is how God is the creative force behind the whole universe. He's the one and only being with the power to make a world full of such beauty and life. And so all these abilities, they make God utterly unique, which is the meaning of the word holy. So a helpful way to think about God's holiness is by using the sun as a metaphor. The sun is unique, at least within our solar system, and it's really powerful. It's the source of all this beautiful life on our planet. And so you could say that the sun is holy. And you can actually take this metaphor even further in that the whole area around the sun is also holy.
Yeah, because the closer you get to the sun, the more intense it gets.
Yeah, exactly. So that very power and goodness that generates all this life is also dangerous. I mean, the sun, if you get too close, will annihilate you. And in the same way, there's this paradox at the heart of God's own holiness, because if you're impure, his presence is dangerous to you. And not because it's bad, but because it's so good.
God is holy, and that, as this video hinted at, has huge implications for us. but so does the most defining characteristic of not what, but who God is. And we'll talk more about that next week. Today, I'm not going to lead prayer. You are. Whether you're at home, in kids' church or junior youth, the leader, teacher, or parent can start and then go around the room. And I want everyone to thank God, not for something that He's given you, but thank Him for who He is. Something maybe that blows your mind about Him, that makes you love Him so much. For example, if I was in the room praying with you guys, I might thank God for the way that He knows everything about me. I might tell Him how amazing it is that He knows everything about everyone and loves them. Pause the video and spend some time praying. If you're in kids' church today, we have an awesome craft for you. You're going to get a wood block. You are going to sand down the edges of the wood block so it's nice and smooth. You're going to have labels that have the 5 characteristics of God. You're going to color them in, and then you're going to stick them on 5 of the 6 sides of the wooden block. Next week, we'll look at the 6th side. I can't wait to see your blocks that you make. If you are doing kids' church at home and you'd like the supplies for this craft, you can stop by the New Hope building during the week and pick them up and do that later in the week with your kids. Thanks, and have a great week.